We like to start every episode with the disclaimer that we are not professionals. Our conversations are solely based on our personal experiences, thoughts, and opinions. Nothing discussed here is meant to be taken as professional mental health or medical advice. If you have questions or need assistance, please seek the help of a licensed professional.
Discussions in this podcast may sometimes revolve around heavy material such as abuse, grooming, religious trauma, and more. Please listen with caution and prioritize your mental health first.
Welcome to Trauma Bondage,
the podcast where we talk about trauma, kinks, and non-traditional lifestyles and relationships from a queer lens.
We're your hosts,
Brigitte
and Beth. We need to get into subspace.
On that note, welcome to Trauma Bondage.
Not the long pause before.
It's my millennial pause. Leave me alone. I'm bad about it.
Yeah.
We've seen. It's fine.
I am too. I'm not great either.
Anyways. Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Yeah. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Heavy sighs. I'm still hungover.
We missed you.
We missed you so much.
We missed you.
Almost like the DOMs that have entered and exited our life that we miss.
In a variety of ways.
Well, sometimes we don't.
We don't miss all of them.
Yeah, no, we don't miss all of them.
But they left their mark. Literally and figuratively in some cases.
All over our bodies. The reason...
On that note.
Okay, you go.
No, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about ending a Dom-sub dynamic. We talked about like Dom-sub relationships and dynamics in our last season, but we didn't really talk about like what it's like when it ends. We just talked about what it's like when it starts and during. But
and what to watch for to make sure you're being safe.
Yeah.
But even then, things can take a turn.
Right.
It's like in divorce. I don't know why I'm going with
did you get that far away look in your eye?
Well, it's like in divorce when like people start to show their true selves.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can come out in these dynamics because there is emotional pull or something like that.
Yeah.
And from a mental standpoint, it can get really
abusive, really
tough and abusive, or it can feel more heightened than if you were going through just a divorce.
Yeah. 100%. Well, we were inspired to do this episode too, because if you guys remember last season, Cuppy's episode towards the end of the season, we talked to her a lot about the mental toll that it took on her ending a DS dynamic and like, honestly, like the trauma that she endured going through that. Not all of them end like that, obviously. That was like an extreme case, but we wanted to take time today to like share a little bit about our experiences, ways that you can like do things safely, and then like just some resources and things that are normal that you might feel like aren't normal when you're going through it, but like we want to make you feel like comfortable with like whatever you're experiencing.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Do we want to kick it off by talking about like, do we want to give a little refresher of what a Dom-sub dynamic is?
Oh, yeah.
For people that are just now tuning in and haven't listened to season 1?
I think that's great.
Okay, cool. So Dom stands for dominant, sub stands for submissive. So you'll hear us like use those terms quite a bit in this podcast. Brigitte and I both identify as subs, and
we have
also doms?
Some Dom-like tendencies. It really depends on the person and the relationship dynamic. I will say myself personally, it is very rare that you're going to find me in like a pro Dom-sub dynamic as the Dom. Yeah. I prefer to be submissive in that dynamic.
Mine is like 50-50. Yeah. Honestly, I think because my primary partner is a Dom, I prefer other partners to be subs.
So you can have
both.
I
can have both. But the explanation I was going to give for what these are. So a dominant is somebody who's in a position of consensual authority, power over their submissive. And this is, again, a consensual relationship where there's a power exchange, right? The sub is giving a lot of power over whether it's their body, their energy, their mind,
their habits,
everything, their time, all of that to their dominant. And that dominant is responsible for caretaking of that sub.
That's where people get misconstrued about dominant, is that they're like, oh, it's all about power and like the beating aspect or something like that. It's not about that. It's about
a caretaking relationship.
It's power / like control. Like, I am willing to take on the burden of control, as in taking care of the things, making sure your needs are met, making sure you're safe, making sure you're healthy and like your well-being.
Yeah.
Making sure that the sub's well-being is cared for.
Yeah.
That is the role.
Yeah.
And the sub is for like innate trust in that person.
A lot of these dynamics are like purely sexual, but a lot of times too, like it can expand and grow over time, and like it can
bleed into day-to-day life.
It can bleed into there are people that we know that have 24/7 dom sub dynamics with their dom or sub, and that means that like it can be things as simple as like checking in, did you drink X amount of water today,
tracking,
did you track,
did you eat, did you drink water today, how many hours of sleep did you get, oh, you drink water, like, show me. Or, like, even an app that's shared, like, you track it, like, stuff like that, just in your day-to-day life.
And this is, like, something that both parties, like, if you're doing it healthily and consenting, can get a lot out of. Like, for me personally, what I get out of being a sub is I am, like, a boss bitch during the day. I run shit at work. I have a lot of power and control and responsibility in my day-to-day life that I want to be able to just, like, let go of, especially sexually. Like, I don't want to be the one in control sometimes sexually, because it allows, if somebody else is taking that, it allows my brain to just like shut off and for me to just feel and like be in my body.
I'm the same way. I'm deeply independent. I'm deeply in control of every aspect of my life. It would be nice to just not think.
Yeah.
Like, it's nice to not have to think that somebody is taking care of it and is doing it.
It's just done.
With good intention.
Yeah. I love it when things are just done. Like, I don't even have to worry about it. Like, things are just taken off my plate. And then the other side of it is the dom side, which, again, like, this may sound like counterintuitive, but I also need that. Like, I love being able to take care of somebody. I like being able to give pleasure to somebody. I like the control aspect of it. Because there are some times where, like, I do have so much control in my day-to-day, but I want to enforce more because I'm feeling like, okay, I need to get this out of my system. And there's a lot of it for me is sexual. Like, I haven't ever done any dom subdynamics where I've been like tracking somebody's stuff. I'm not opposed to it, but I just haven't.
I think that's why I don't have as much of like the dom side, like as aggressively as you do. Like the need for it.
Yeah.
I have it sometimes, but I think I have to be in a very certain like
headspace,
set of my frame of mind. I feel like a lot of my caretaking piece comes out like in friendship. Like, what can I take off your plate? No, I got this. Sit down.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
Kind of thing like that.
It's very dom of you.
It is, but it's also very subby of me. Right?
Yeah. Duality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do things for you whether you liked it or not.
Yeah. Bitch, take it. Like I can't. Take it. I don't know what it is, but fun.
Yeah, I would say, like, again, there's nuance to everything, as we always try to, like, disclaimer. These dynamics are whatever you want them to be, as long as you're with somebody who is consenting and, like, also is getting something out of it. So, like, this is supposed to be
of your boundaries and everything like that.
This is supposed to be something that can be an outlet, something that can heal trauma. Like, for me, having a dom heals a lot of things for me, and, like, it helps me with grief, stress, anxiety, depression. Like, it's a mental health thing.
Yes.
And so that's why it's so important that it is done correctly and not abused, because you are investing so much mentally and emotionally into those dynamics, even if you don't mean to.
Yeah.
Even if you're not trying to, it's easy to get hurt in a dynamic like this, whether physically, emotionally, or mentally.
Yes.
So we wanted to, like, give a little bit of experiences we've had.
Shine some light on what it is to end it, because we talk like it's fun to be in it when you're in it.
Yeah.
Until it's not, or until it's just it just runs its course.
Yeah.
And ending it can cause a lot of strife.
Yeah.
If you're not careful and if you don't do it well.
Right. Because a lot of the dynamic, again, because it's an energy exchange, there's so much trust built up there that you have to have. Like, I would go out on a limb and say, like, if you're a sub and you can't fully trust somebody who is doming you, like, don't let them dom you.
Yeah.
Don't let them be your dom. At least not like.
And the problem with that is that you may trust them at the beginning and things change, and but you're so like conditioned in that because it rewires your brain.
Yes,
in a lot of ways that you have a hard time seeing it for what it is. So like, give yourself some grace, or try. I have a hard time with that.
Yeah,
but we do it. I will say like the best ending of a dynamic of this nature for me was one that I was not emotionally invested in because it was a little easier to detach. Mentally, I was in it. Well, because I've talked about how I've had several of these dynamics, some being in a more like professional sense where like it's contractual and this is what it is, and there's no like strings attached emotionally when it comes to that kind of involvement. Like it wasn't a quote unquote romantic relationship. It was purely play for release. But like that's what it was for both parties.
Yeah.
And I will say that was personally, it's going to be different for everyone, the easiest dynamic to step out of, but that's also because I was with somebody who ran the gamut the whole way through in a very healthy, almost clinical manner. Like it was very transactional, very businesslike.
Yeah.
Like here's the paperwork. This is what we agree on and don't agree on. Here's our consistent check-ins. This is what you like. Okay, like we're going to sit down and have a conversation. Dynamics are shifting. Maybe you're getting into a relationship. You're getting into a relationship. Maybe that is something that is shifting what we're at this point. Like it's a monogamous thing. Because at the time I was monogamous. Like I wasn't dating anyone. And then I was like, oh, hey, like I'm dating someone. We need to revisit this because in monogamy, this is not like not acceptable. It's not acceptable in my current relationship. So like we need to revisit. And we talked about it, and it was very okay, like this is how we're going to step away from it. And even in that moment, that person was still very much in the dom setting of let me make sure that your well-being is taken care of. What do you need to ensure mentally you're going to be okay stepping away from this? Because again, and Cuppy has mentioned it in her episode, it's something that we've mentioned throughout the podcast, is that it rewires your brain. And I can't explain the feeling just because I think it rewires everybody just a little bit different. But like you get very connected with this person. It can be almost spiritual sometimes.
I was going to say, even if it's not like a romantic relationship, it still is very emotional. And like, spiritually you do become connected. They
become part of you and you become part of them. And it's genuine care without romantic love.
Yeah, sometimes there's interchangeable.
Hopefully, yes. Yeah. It can be very interchangeable. I'm saying in this particular position, it was not. So
can you explain like the contract side of it? Because we haven't really talked about that this season. Like how that was established for you and like what that looked like for anybody that's never heard of that.
For us, I mean, I think every single one is different. There are some people that will make you sign like what is it? I was going to say DNR, not a do not resuscitate. NDA. Letters.
DNR.
An NDA.
Do not respond. Is that what that stands for?
Do not resuscitate.
Oh.
Like, don't also re-alive me.
Yeah. Just let me die in peace.
Yeah. You're not allowed to sign one of those. But NDAs, which I do not believe in. Because I think that is a gateway to abuse.
It is.
And allowing someone to abuse you. Yeah. So I don't encourage it. Look into it yourself, see if it makes sense for you. But contractually it's more about going through the menu, if you will. What's on the table, what's off the table, how often are you checking in? What are your safe words, hard limits, soft limits, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Okay. The whole shebang. Where can you meet? Where can you do stuff? Where are you uncomfortable? Are there people that you're uncomfortable having the dynamic around that you need to ensure it is separate from this, like your work, like your coworkers, stuff like that. So that's what the conversation was around: signing both parties, having a copy, and like throw it in your safe, call it a day, right? Yeah. So that was how it worked for us. We checked in probably once a month, if I recall correctly, probably once a month, just to make sure like, are dynamics still good? Has anything changed in life? Is there anything that I need to be putting more of a focus on when it comes to like your needs? Like, are you experiencing a lot of stress at work right now? How do we shift that in the dynamic on both sides?
Yeah.
are you going to be traveling a lot? What does that mean for us? Or the tracking, like we see each other pretty consistently. Like we had set up a schedule and that's how it kept on.
Yeah.
By the end of it, it was, hey, things are changing. We need to separate this dynamic. And it was, what do you need? It's always a, what do you need to succeed? It should never be a personal slight. Like, oh, you don't want to be with me anymore.
Yeah.
Regardless of romantic or not. It's not about that.
I think this is where it gets complicated because, like, this dynamic, again, you said it was easier because, like, there wasn't, like, an actual official emotional relationship investment there. A lot of times I feel like there is, and like it
that's why I started with this one, because I'm just like, this is very transactional. And
clinical, like you said,
it's very clinical. It was the easiest one. So I want to bring to light, like, there are healthy dynamics that do it, and you can do it when it's clinical and you can do it when it's romantic. But when you do have an emotional investment, it can make it a little bit harder. But there are DOMs that run it clinically in the same way that don't do it as well, where they do take it personally because maybe they have some stuff that they need to work on and get a little insecure about, where they think that they're not doing a good job, or it switches something in their brain where they go, well, I'm the DOM and I get to say when you can and can't leave, which is not okay.
No, that's not okay.
It's not okay.
I mean, that just defeats the entire, like, purpose, kind of like backbone and purpose of it, which is like both parties get something equally out of it. And just because the sub is the one submitting doesn't mean they have less consent that needs to be given or actual control over what happens to them.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a very simple kind of like done. For me, I was like, check in with me every once in a while as we wean off of this, because I've been so used to this for a certain amount of time, but like, I'm not going to be seeing you as often. It's going to take a little bit of a toll to separate the mental piece from you as being someone who takes care of me and getting back into, I'm taking care of myself. And now I have to let this other person take care of me, but they're doing it in a romantic way. But it was good. It was a really good dynamic. I have had other ones.
Haven't we all?
Like I mentioned, where like I was being very specific, where they were like, well, no, I'm the DOM and I get to say when you can and can't leave. And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. Like, I have autonomy.
Where, like, honestly, that's where you want to be careful with getting into dynamics with DOMs that, like, have never A, done it before or done their research. And then B, also, like, if they're super experienced DOMs, like, you need to understand what their track record is with their subs. Like, I think we talked about this in the Cuppy episode. It would be so great to get, like, a review site for DOMs. Yeah. So that subs can come back and, like, review, like...
Yeah. Like, you rate your Uber driver. Yeah. You can rate your DOM. When it comes to safety and, like, well-being and... Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because not a lot, but, like, it's kind of the same way as I see, like... A lot of people that are very abusive gravitate towards the church because there are positions of power you can get into and abuse that power. It's very similar. It's similar with like BDSM in general. You have to be careful who you're engaging in this stuff with. You have to make sure that they're doing it like ethically, safely and ethically, because again, any type of practice, religious, spiritual, physical, whatever, can attract people that have bad intentions based on like their desire to control and hurt others. And I think like, because especially if you're a sub listening to this, you are putting yourself in a very vulnerable position. Deeply vulnerable. Mentally, physically, spiritually, all of it. And so, emotionally, like, sometimes, depending on the relationship. So, yeah. And we've mentioned before, there are a lot of fake DOMs, and we've talked about, like, kind of how to spot those things. Take your time. The thing about these things is that, like, a lot of the times, like, oh, I need this release, and you can go into it from, like, a transactional perspective, but your body also still reacts when you are attracted and lust, and sometimes you act impulsively, which is okay. But that also means that if you don't take the step back to really objectively look at it as a whole scope of what it is, you may go into something that isn't right for you, or isn't healthy for you, or isn't safe for you. So it's something to keep in mind.
I'll talk about my experience.
I was like, based on the reaction I just got, I feel like we should go to this, which honestly caveats into relationship side as well.
Yeah. So I had an actual relationship with somebody.
Romantic relationship
with somebody that is a dom, but wasn't my dom because I am poly, and at the time I had another dom, and that was like
already well established.
Yeah. Like I didn't want to like replace or be redundant in that dynamic with anybody else. Like this other person, you absolutely can.
You can.
For
you don't just have to have one.
I didn't want that. I wanted I only felt safe enough to have like one specific dom.
No, that made sense.
So, but yeah.
Especially with where you were at in life.
Yes.
Vulnerably, emotionally, everything.
All of that.
For you, it made sense.
But I had another person like that, and the person I dated was a dom. Everything they did sexually was kinky, like BDSM related. That's just how they operated sexually. And like, that was what drew us together. Like, we both were like extremely kinky people. And it was
very attracted to one another.
Exactly. There was a lot of physical attraction that was like blurring the lines between everything. And it turned into this interesting, like, you're not my dom, but you're doming me in a way where it's like, what we're doing sexually is you doming me. But like, we didn't have conversations around like our dom sub dynamic. Cause like, again, that wasn't established. That wasn't what I wanted with them. I already had that. And so it got, like, this is for polyamorous people, too, that are in, like, dom sub dynamics. Mm-hmm. It can get a little messy because it's, like...
It can get muddy. It can get messy, especially when emotions get involved.
Yeah.
Like, when I look back at that relationship, I wish that you two had sat and had a conversation about the expectation prior to diving in. Mm-hmm. But that's where I said sometimes...
We kind of did. It just wasn't heard, I don't think.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, that should have been the red flag. That should have been the quits. But again, sometimes we get lusty and we go impulse.
I'm like notoriously bad for like acting based off of like physical attraction and
especially when you're emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah. Well,
because it is
that's
your release.
That's the only times that I've ever done anything I really regret with people is like when I've been in vulnerable emotional states, then it's like I'm the type of person that, like, when I'm going through the hardest things in my life, I'm, like, 10 times more horny because, like, that's like the way
somebody make me stop thinking.
That's literally what it is.
Somebody make me stop feeling. I need to just go to a different dimension.
I need to stop feeling here.
I need to go to subspace so I cannot think.
Yes, it's an outlet.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I was in this dynamic with this person. They weren't my dom, but we were doing dom sub things. And, like, the power dynamic got a little bit weird. I didn't feel like there was a lot of communication. And then, like, the actual dom that I had at the time was, like, seeing marks and bruises and, like, all of these other things that, like, weren't really talked about as much as they should have been with this other party in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, we have to stop that. But then they're like, well, I'm a dom and this is one of the things that I like to do. So, like, basically I can't do this thing that I love to do with you.
Well, yeah, haven't established that that dynamic. That means you have to exhibit self-control.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for doms. Here's the thing. Just because you're in control does not mean you get to just lack self-control. Mm-hmm. If anything, it should mean your self-control should be better than anything.
You should be very in control.
You should, because you have to stop on a dime. You pivot on a dime. Things change. You're in charge.
Your hair is safe word. Done.
Yeah, done. Yeah. If you do not exhibit self-control, you should not be practicing being a dom.
I agree. I very much agree.
And if you try to guilt somebody into thinking that and doing that, frankly, you suck. Okay.
Yeah.
You suck. You're being manipulative.
Looking back, there were a lot of things that were just like, But, you know, it was a complicated situation. There was a lot of different people's feelings involved. And then when it ended, it was weird because I was like, I just lost this really, like, kinky, like, dynamic that I had. And it felt like a dom sub relationship in some ways. And in other ways it didn't.
Because it was almost trying to be forced.
Yes, exactly. It was a little bit, it was weird emotionally. It was weird emotionally. Yeah. I'll say that. And like, there were a lot of other factors like happening in my life at that moment. But like.
It was a wild ride.
What I learned is that when you're entering into a relationship with someone who is a sub or a dom, and that's like how they express themselves sexually, if you aren't trying to have that dynamic with them and like you're not trying to formalize anything, you still need to have a fucking conversation about it. Like you need to have a conversation about desires, boundaries, likes, dislikes, what's okay, what's not okay. And those things need to be respected and upheld because like you're still going to naturally, especially if you're a sub, start seeing that person in a different way than you would somebody that you didn't have that type of relationship with. You're still going to kind of like, if you're a sub, you're still going to be like, oh, this is my like dom right now. Even if that's not your dynamic with them, like that's been established.
Yeah.
So it can get messy.
It can get messy. I want to hop into like the darker side of ending the relationship when it doesn't end well. Because like even your experience was more emotional. It still ended fairly amicably.
Yeah, it was fine.
Like it was still healthy, and it was like, okay, everybody got what they need to step away, and everybody was okay, even on the dom side, which is important. It's not just about the sub and what they need stepping away. It's also the dom because they're losing a part of their dynamic.
Again,
as
equal.
Well.
They're equal parties.
Equal parties. So I've also been in positions where it started out really healthily as a dom sub dynamic. Things were spoken about. Things were established. Check-ins were established. Things would fall off here and there, but you know, we're humans. Emotions got involved, turned into romantic relationship with a dom sub dynamic in tandem, which this is where I always say err on the side of caution, mostly from personal experience when it comes to intermixing a like mental transactional dynamic with a romantic one. Because this is where it can get very muddy. Emotions can be heightened. And especially in polyamory.
There's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on there because there's, again, the rewiring of your brain of ownership with a dom. Of like being owned by, and when you get those feelings involved, a lot of those times those can slip into, I want you to be only with me. Like, I want to be in charge of everything and who you have relationships with and who your primary partner is and stuff like that. And that's when you start getting into, ooh, like, I'm losing my autonomy. I'm losing the ability to say yes and no to things, like going outside of the established bounds. Yeah. Which you really have to pay attention to. But it's really hard to when you're in love with the person. And when you have the ownership aspect with that person, it adds a whole other level of, I don't even know the word for it. Like just
attachment.
Attachment deeply. So the detaching can get very ugly, not just in terms of emotions, because like I said earlier, in divorce, somebody that you have loved and been with for 30 years can turn into the ugliest person you've ever met, and you don't know who the hell you just spent the last 30 years with. Yeah. Right? That can happen in any frame of time with somebody. So in this particular thing, this is somebody who was like trying to essentially attain me and keep me as their own possession, relationship, whatever. It caused a lot of flack. Not listening to boundaries, things shifting, even though it was never discussed. Like, and me being communicative and being clear, like, this is what I said I can do. Like, you have to stay within this. So when it ended, the problem was I was so deeply emotionally invested. And my brain was so rewired into like, not only do I love this person, but I give all of my deepest parts to this person in play as well, which fucks with your head a lot. So for me, as somebody who like, I've struggled with mental health in the past, part of a dom sub relationship and dynamic is also losing that. You kind of lose a sense of purpose. Sometimes you can lose your sense of who you are, your identity, sense of self, sense of safety. And that is very scary to lose. Like what you feel like you're driven to do, what makes you feel your best, but also like your safest space to go absolutely disappears. Your safest person to go to absolutely disappears. And then on top of it, let's add the emotional turmoil of losing love and breaking your heart.
Yeah, it's a recipe for attachment issues.
It's really, really difficult to the point where it can take you to a very, very dark place. So this is where I say, I think regardless of the dynamic, whether it's clinical, transactional, business-like, or romantic, emotional, if it is coming to a close, one, doing your best to make it amicable, but that's not always going to happen. Mm-hmm. And we know that because relationships are crazy and messy and love is weird. But being able to check in with somebody unbiased and outside of it, right? Your friends may not know about your dynamic, stuff like that. You don't want the judgment, and you don't like, I personally say, like, don't go to somebody who's like on your side versus on their side.
Yeah.
This is where I say, seek out a mental health professional.
Yes.
As things are separating or as they're leading up to the separation, so that you have somebody who is informed that can help you through it. And also help you navigate the emotions and the loss of that and like the coping mechanisms to help rebuild that as you're going through it.
You have to replace your support system.
You have to, because you just lost like your full ass support, like in every way possible. So you have to replace the support system. I'm glad you said that. And the thing is, I understand, like, therapy is expensive.
Yeah.
Not everybody has insurance to cover it. There are resources, like, what is it? BetterHelp. BetterHelp.
Yeah.
BetterHelp is a really good one. There's just a shit ton of apps online now that are for that. Honestly, there's even AI apps that are coming out that like can have a conversation with you and like listen to you vent if that's what you need.
Yeah.
But like, I think like Lyra Health is something that is offered through a bunch of different companies and insurances. Sorry, babe.
But playing bootsies with you.
Bootsies. I highly recommend doing a check-in. You don't have to go consistently. Go as many times as makes sense for you. But I do recommend doing a check-in with yourself so that you're replacing the support system while you're navigating that loss.
Like, if you can afford to go to a kink-informed therapist, it makes all the difference. If you go to just any therapist, they're not really going to understand the gravity of kink and how it ties to your mental health, and especially a DS dynamic, like the way that you can be impacted by losing that. Like, they're probably gonna treat it as like a normal relationship, like a standard run-of-the-mill relationship, and they're not going to realize
navigating grief.
Yeah,
it's not just navigating.
It's a lot
grief,
different.
That's part of it. Yeah, grief is part of it, which is so frustrating, regardless of emotion. So yeah. Kink informed,
if you can.
Trauma informed, if you're somebody who was in the dynamic because of the need to help replace some stuff and have control over trauma. And that was your coping mechanism. So you're losing the coping mechanism, being able to find something at least to replace it with that for the time being until you maybe have a new dynamic.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's really important. I feel lucky that, like, I was in therapy with a kink-informed, poly-informed, trauma-informed therapist who he knew everything prior, like, about my life when I was going through this. So that I just went to him and was like, hey, here's what's happening.
Help.
And that helped a lot. But I think if I hadn't had that, it would have been a lot different. And again, it's like, this wasn't even technically like a DS dynamic. Like, I can't imagine, like, the dom I have currently, aka my wife, like, I can't imagine losing my wife, but then also that dynamic. Yeah. It's so different than outlet, anything I've ever had. That safe space, that support.
That's a lot to lose in one blow.
Yeah. It's so much. And, like, there's something I wanted to talk about related to just kind of like the way that if you're a sub, a dom can bring out your inner child. For me, at least, like, I've never met my inner child until I met my wife. And, like, they brought out, like, the little version of me. And I mean, I didn't really have a childhood. Like, I was parentified since I was born because I was the oldest. And so for me, that's what being a sub is about. Like, I get to feel taken care of.
Kind of healing your inner child a little bit.
Literally. Yeah. So if you can think about, like, a lot of people are doing it for similar reasons, like losing that, especially if it's like a side of you, like, there's a side of me that only comes out around this person. And, like, it doesn't even come out when I'm alone. Because when I'm alone, I'm, like, in boss mode. Like, I need to get shit done.
You're taking care of yourself because that's what you've always done.
Exactly. So, yeah, there's, like, I can't even imagine how hard that would be. Like, again, to Bridget's point earlier, like, you're losing a part of your identity. It doesn't mean you can't get it back. I want to, like, make sure you're not like terrified to ever get into a DS relationship. Who you are
is still there. It's still just there. The way it rewires you, it means you have to dismantle that wiring and then rewire.
Yeah. Exactly. And, you know, we saw in Cuppy's episode, like, she was actively in the middle of her journey doing that. Yeah. Actively. She was in therapy. She was working through her anxiety. She was getting her personality back, like, after having gone through something so horrible. And a lot of this advice is really geared towards people that are ending dynamics, like, in, like, a unhealthy way or like in a bad way, or it's dynamics that you just don't want to end that unfortunately have to end. Not all DS dynamics end like this. Some are, like Bridget said, very easy, very seamless, very like,
there's some great,
it's a conversation, you know,
healthy ways to end it. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it's not difficult to get there.
No.
If you are on the same page and you can genuinely set aside your stuff to ensure everybody's taken care of. It may even hurt in those moments. Like you may still experience grief in the easiest form, but ultimately it's about care for one another.
Yeah. I would also say, like, if you're a dom or sub-listening or interested in being either, I would only enter into a dynamic with another person that has strong communication skills. And honestly, polyamory too. Like, this kind of goes for everything kink, BDSM, dom, sub, poly related. Like, all of these things take an extreme amount of communication.
Keyword extreme.
Extreme. If you are trying to do this with somebody that is avoidant, doesn't like to talk, shoves their feelings, doesn't express what they want, like, it is inevitably going to end badly. And trust me, I know. From personal experience.
Not me disassociating.
Yeah, no, we literally are both like thinking through our fucking list of people. It doesn't fucking work.
No.
And that doesn't mean that there's not always like room that you can like improve your communication. Like, there's always room to improve, but somebody needs to be decently good at talking through things.
Yes.
And like also be willing to communicate. Yes. Like, I think it's the willingness.
It's a willingness to open up, because again, communication is still vulnerability. So if you're somebody who's like, I am not really into being vulnerable, then maybe this isn't the path for you, no. At least not at this point in your life.
Nope.
And that's
Go
okay.
do some work.
That's okay. Go do some work. Mm-hmm. Find the outlet elsewhere. Just make sure you just be safe. Be safe about it. Yeah. Like, things are scary.
And I will also say, finding community with other people that are in similar dynamics is really important, because this is where you can kind of gut check sometimes. Like, if something is feeling a little bit off, or you're feeling like, that didn't feel right, but like, I don't know enough to like know if it was right or not.
Or if you're also somebody who suffers from trauma in other dynamics and you gaslight yourself into thinking, hey, is this okay? Yeah. Like, oh no, I'm just used to this because this person used to it. No. Check in. Get an outside perspective.
Yeah.
They may be wrong because they don't know everything, but like, sometimes it's good to be like, okay, this is a scenario. This is what I'm telling myself, but like, what do you think?
Yeah.
Based on your personal experience.
Yeah.
Sometimes it helps.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only other thing I want to touch on, because not to beat a dead horse with a stick, like, that's a saying. But we both are kind of self-proclaimed subs for the most part. Mm-hmm. You have a little bit on the dommy side, but like, for doms, the hard part there is that when it comes to ending things, you are almost charged with more responsibility in the dismantling, because coming from a sub, I have given you so much power over me that even in those moments, like, I can take my power back and do it, but like, there is, again, with the rewiring, there is still a piece that goes, I need to listen to you. I need your perspective and guidance on this, which means, again, self-control, like, coming into it, but also really taking that role seriously all the way to the end. Mm-hmm. Even if that means adding like a DS dynamic aftercare protocol. You're still technically that dom without being the dom, and ensuring that you're finalizing your duties all the way through.
Yeah.
Like, you are on active duty until you're not, but even then you still have to wrap up the loose ends.
Yeah.
The loose ends must be wrapped up, and it is best to do them nice and tidy. And the thing is, if the other party is having difficulties with that because maybe it was transactional and they did develop feelings, being able to make sure that they're being cared for while also establishing boundaries.
Yeah.
Their boundaries still get established even after the fact. Yeah. And you have to respect those.
I think it needs to be established, like, is this a clean cut? We don't communicate anymore. Yeah. Like, if we do have interaction with each other, what does that look like? Because I think, again, like we've talked about this, the sub is in a little bit more of an emotionally vulnerable position because they've given you so much power and control. And, like, again, that's not to say a dom can't be negatively impacted by a sub, because they absolutely can. It's possible for sure, but it's not as common just because of the power dynamics that are established in these types of relationships. So yeah, I think we just want to make sure that everyone's, like, thinking about this, and
both sides.
And coming from somebody who doms as well, when I'm going into a situation where I know someone's subbing for me, I haven't had a full-time, like, sub, so I haven't really had to end something with somebody. But I will say, like, even sexually, like, checking in is so important, and, like, making sure that you're, like, understanding how someone's feeling. Yeah. Being empathetic as a dom is so important. You need to be able to be in tune with, like, what other people are feeling and experiencing. Otherwise, like, you probably will hurt somebody. Yeah. Like, you probably will. So I always, like...
And that should never be the underlying intention, right?
No.
Like, you're never intending to hurt somebody.
No, absolutely not.
If somebody's getting joy out of causing you pain...
Yeah.
In a not consensual chosen way.
Not in a sadist
way. Then we're losing what the actual dynamic really is.
Yeah, exactly. So we just wanted to put that out there. Again, if you guys have more... insight on this, if you want to give us your perspective as a dom or sub,
or even just your advice to other people, like how you do it in a healthy way, share the love, like share that experience, share that knowledge, because it's hard to find. It really is hard to find unless you know the very niche little corners of the world to go talk to. Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of kerfuffle online for it. So cool.
Love you guys.
Love you.
It's time for Spicy Trauma.
Each week, we like to wrap up with our spicy trauma.
Tell us your spicy trauma. DM us or use the link in our bio to share your story. Guys, I have not had the best track record of people I've dated. To say the least. It's gotten better-ish. No, it's gotten better. I think it's gotten better. Ratio-wise, it has gotten better. But I used to date this girl who was honestly, I hate it when people are like, oh yeah, the ex of mine was crazy. She was a little psychotic. I do not consider her crazy, but, like, she had some neuroses at the very least. Like, there was some weird shit going on. Where I later learned that, like, some of this was pretty consistent and I think maybe behavioral. But we wake up one day and she's like, oh, she's like, you need to, like, because I go to the restroom. That's what I do first thing in the mornings. I go pee because gravity hits and I got to pee. So I go to the bathroom and she's like, you better hurry up or I'm going to pee the bed. And I was like, haha, like, no, don't piss in my bed. And she was like, I'm going to do it. And joking, I'm like, haha, like, that's so funny. Like, oh yeah, totally. Pee the bed, like, bratting. Guess what this bitch does?
A full-blown adult woman.
Adult woman, literally. Just, like, she sits up out of bed, plants herself in the middle of it, and I shit you not, pisses. Like,
did you
literally
end
just
the relationship immediately?
No, that's the worst part, is that I stayed with her for another fucking year. Because I was like, what the fuck? But of course, at the time, she, like, the way she played it off, she was just like, ha ha ha. Like,
she was acting like it was funny.
Like, it was funny. Da, 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 da. And I was just like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? This is crazy. But also, like, we've been in a relationship for a long time. Maybe I was in the bathroom too long, like, da-da-da. But I still had to clean the sheets, and I had to, like, go
She made you clean that shit up?
Yeah. She didn't clean it up. I had to like go rent like a wet vac to like clean. I was telling somebody this and they were like, buy a new mattress. And I was like, I couldn't afford a new mattress. I'm sorry. Do you know how much mattresses are? But like, literally peas in the lowest bed. But get this. I later learned after a relationship has ended and stuff like that, because this person like cheated on me consistently for multiple years.
She just told all the girls she fucked that she pees in beds.
Oh, I did.
Good.
That's the thing, because they all started reaching out to me, showing me like all the texts and stuff like that, where they were like, we didn't know you were together. We are so sorry. She was telling us that you were like separate because we were long distance and like we were only together when we were in person. Yeah. And that like it was an open relationship, which at the time it wasn't. Mm-hmm. Like that was not the dynamic. It was monogamous exclusive in that relationship. And so it was stuff that I had kind of picked up on there at the end, where I was like, there was something actually really wrong with this person. Plus, like, she was telling me she was taking caffeine pills. She was actually on speed the whole fucking time. So she was, like, constantly having issues. She didn't have any, like, trauma. So, like, not to judge anybody who has trauma and has issues with these. But she would literally be the person who was so lazy in the morning and wouldn't, like, get up to go to the bathroom. She would just relieve herself in bed and then leave somebody to clean up the comforter.
So she was a bed peer.
Yes. She was a bedwetter, but like not like trauma-induced, like accidental.
Yeah.
It was like literally calculated. I choose not to walk 3 feet to the bathroom.
What?
And somebody else will clean up my mess.
This is the first time I've ever heard of anybody doing this.
I know. It was insane. And I still, to this day, can't believe that I stayed that long. But like, in my bed.
That's crazy.
I was like, do I need to get you a litter box? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, insane. But yeah, she would do that all the time. She was on speed. And these girls, it was so funny because, like, pretty small town that she was in. So, like, the pool wasn't that big. You better believe that I told every single...
She's definitely peeing in the pool.
Because none of them knew.
Yeah.
Because they weren't staying over at her place. I was the only one that was. So they never actually experienced that. And she was probably also, like, on her best behavior when she was just, like, one and doneing it with a lot of people in her town. So I remember telling all of them, and it spread like wildfire. So she had to move towns because she couldn't get a date or a lay, because they were all like...
Because they were like, she might...
I don't want you to piss in my bed. Yeah, literally. So yeah, that was fun.
Well...
That was fun for me.
Speaking of bodily fluids...
it wasn't even a piss kink, which is just...
I know.
A shame.
I was going to say, like, I get a piss kink. Like,
I would have been like, oh, okay, that's your thing. Like, you know, this was just her... being a dick.
It's not sexy whenever it's coming from a place of just like not wanting to like get up and
it was on the edge of like abuse. Like,
yeah,
she was manipulating. I don't even know where to put that in.
Yeah,
but like a calculated like
only crazy people pee.
So crazy, wild. God, it just like popped back up the other day when somebody was talking about it, and I was like, oh wow, that's a memory that was in like the depths of Mordor that decided to knock on the door and say hello. Like, I can't believe I allowed that.
Well, I'm glad you did for spicy trauma.
Self-esteem and growth and working on stuff and going to therapy and working through shit, and also like identity and taking power back. Don't let people piss in your bed.
Ever.
Unless you've like talked about it and you're okay with it.
I want to put that on a t-shirt. Don't let people piss in your bed. Unless it's your kink.
Give me yours. You said talking about bodily fluids.
I said, speaking of bodily fluids, I'm going to tell the full story of something that we like teased earlier in another episode. Yeah.
It comes up several times throughout this season.
Yeah, it's just like a fun little thing. Like we've talked about, it's just a fun little thing. I'm literally just a girl. So you guys know I do this thing where I have this like close friend story that sometimes on Friday nights, date night, whatever, I like post the aftermath. Okay, so this got posted. We're in San Antonio, me and my wife. We have a really nice hotel room. I'm like, it's vacation. Let's get down and dirty. Let's fuck. Let's do everything that we want to do, whatever. I'm a little drunk. My wife is also a little drunk. So I don't really fully remember everything that happened. I just remember at one point being pushed up against the wall, like face first, and being fucked from behind. Okay. Mm-hmm. So usually when this happens, if I squirt, it's like kind of like it goes backwards. You know, like, yeah, that's how it goes. And anatomically, that makes sense. for some reason, I think I just had a lot of alcohol in my system or something. It projectiled forward into the wall. Okay, so this doesn't sound like a problem until I look down and realize I'm actively squirting into an electrical plug-in.
It was a miracle you didn't start a fire. A miracle.
Like, there's a whole outlet that I look like I'm aiming. Like, I felt like a man for the first time in my life. I was like, oh, wow, this is what it feels like to be able to aim. That's crazy.
The fire department comes and they go, it looks like arson, that somebody put a liquid substance in this outlet and started the fire.
So
I'm get charged for incidental.
I can't control this. I'm stuck against this wall. I can't make it stop. This outlet's just going to get drenched. And I took a picture of it after, and it was just like...
It looks like somebody took a water bottle, stabbed some holes in the top, and just went right at the outlet. It's insane. From personal viewing.
And I was like...
My God.
All right, we're done. We're done. We're calling it a night. Order Buffalo Wild Wings.
I'm not joking. You guys are lucky you didn't get like a $500 credit card charge.
I know.
Somebody's going to try and plug something in and they're like, oh, this hotel sucks. This outlet doesn't even work.
We're literally a hazard to be around. But yeah, no, it was fine. I mean...
You better hope a murder never happens in that room because your DNA is all over that outlet.
That's true. I mean, maybe that's the way I go to jail. I know I'm going to go eventually. Anyways, there's your outlet squirting story for all of you who are not in the close friends yet.
Oh my God.
And with that...
Pissing in beds, squirting on outlets.
Pissing in beds.
We're just having a wild ride.
We're just wet girls. I think I broke Bridget again. She wants to kill me. Okay, before I die.
We love you. Help me. Waving with your hair. Be good. Be good.
Be good or don't. I clearly won't.
She won't. I won't. Don't. Just don't be good. It's fine.
I think I'm tired of telling them to try. Goodbye.
Bye.
If you like today's episode, follow us on social media at Trauma Bondage Pod. Follow Beth at Modern Day Lilith and Bridget at Your Faith Femme.
If voyeurism is your kink, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Trauma Bondage Podcast. Production by Instrumental Media. Special thanks to D. Dumpy and Wolfstar for music.